should we see an upside in textile exports this year?
We'll definitely see increasing exports to the UK.
I believe there is a free flow of goods between UK and the EU. Is it so? If that is so, then can UK act as our Dubai in Europe?
If we were looking at Apple's value chain in India, the India specific value chain, initially, then you would probably not see more than 10 to 15% of the components coming from anywhere other than China, or even and almost no components being sourced from India. You look at their supply chain today, about a third of the components are already being made in India. You are well aware, Pratim, of some of the large Indian firms which are getting into contract manufacturing. So if you think of the G20, which really is 90% of global trade in the economy, we are almost FTAs with everybody. Soon we'll have it besides China. This will give greater confidence to Indian firms to invest in the UK and vice versa. So this will definitely help a lot of GCCs, especially keeping in mind that the UK is the hub of a lot of financial sector. So, we have given close to 90% of our manufacturing goods. We have liberalized that, some immediately, some over a period of time. It includes Scotch whiskey. This was a major ask, that the biggest beneficiary of that also will be an Indian conglomerate called Tata, because the
Right.
most import successful
JLR.
high-end, yes, is the JLR. So, and we are more circumspect in the case of EVs because there we are actually quite behind the curve.
Namaskar. This is Pratim Ranjan Bose, and you are watching Podcast with Pratim. I have with me Dr. Pritam Banerjee, Head of Center for WTO Studies in New Delhi. Pritam, welcome to the show.
Namaskar, Pratim. Good to be here.
Pritam, India UK FTA. There was a lot of hype about things, and last couple of years we have seen plethora of FTAs. It was FTA time, and you have discussed why in previous podcasts that the global trade has been shifting from the WTO regime to a new system or lack of system, whichever is true. So the India-UK FTA will be operationalized on July 15. My first question is, how should it impact? I mean, what are the immediate impacts that we will see in trade and investments, and how it is going to work out in the coming years? Over to you.
Thank you, Pratim. So I think the immediate effect would be for a lot of our labor-intensive exports. Just to give you a data point, out of the approximately 9,000 odd tariff lines with duties on that UK has in its list of in its tariff schedule, close to 5,000 had positive duties.
Okay.
Now, once the FTA is implemented, on most of these lines, you will go to immediately to zero, as we call EIF, effective at the time of implementation, and then rest of them, in some cases, they go to zero over a period of time. But largely speaking, UK has eliminated duties on 99% of the manufacturing exports that we have to that country. This is a major win because you would appreciate, Pratinda, that many of our competitors in these labor-intensive sectors like textiles, carpets, leatherware, footwear, etc., like Bangladesh, were enjoying what we call as GSP benefits because they are considered LDC countries. Other countries like Romania, etc., had preferential treatment. Turkey had preferential treatment, and Vietnam had some preferential treatment as well. So basically, as far as our competitors were concerned, they were getting zero duty access while we were paying duties. This will reduce that competitive disadvantage. So that's the immediate impact. The more longer term impact is that, here I would like to just underline that. Please remember that actually UK was not supposed to be a separate deal. When we had started negotiating with the European Union some years back for a comprehensive FTA, UK was still a member of the European Union. In between, Brexit happened, which necessitated a separate deal with the UK because,
Right.
they become a separate entity. So the overall strategy for that entire agreement, both with you and the UK, is that we are seeing significant demographic challenges in those countries. And many of the firms are looking to basically have a China plus one strategy. So both of these factors means that actively British headquartered firms and European Union headquartered firms are looking at alternative places to invest. Now, India obviously offers a huge domestic economies of scale of market, which very few other countries have to offer. But in addition, if my FTA strategy now links me to almost all the major economies, which is what it would do by 2028, 29, it means that a British or a European firm can obviously think, if my manufacturing plant in India, I can import all the intermediates I need from India's FTA partners at
Right.
zero duty and export the product out of India to the major markets of the world and also at zero duty, because India has this network of FTAs. So, I have the network of FTAs, I have economies of scale, I have demographics, I have all of these positive factors to attract large amounts of investment to create employment for my economy. So that's the overall strategic longer term objective.
A couple of questions, Pritam. Number one is a pointed question that should we see an upside in textile exports this year?
We'll definitely see increasing exports to the UK as our disadvantage comes down and vis-a-vis our competitors. Definitely, we will be seeing that. This will be complemented by some of the industrial policy and budget interventions that we have been seeing for a couple of years, where scale is going up in India. So that's on the positive side. And but that's not in textiles. I think you will see some of that happen in footwear, in made-ups, in carpets, and several other areas like that. And of course, once the European Union agreement, which we are expecting to be substantially done and in force, perhaps post Diwali, but definitely by end of the year, you will see the whole European market also, which is a much larger market than UK standalone, show the same effects.
Right. Uh, I believe there is a free flow of goods between UK and the EU. Is it so? If that is so, then can UK act as our Dubai in Europe?
No, that is not, so there are rules of origin. So there is an agreement between the UK and Europe which treats British origin goods in one way, but Indian goods which are simply transiting or being transshipped from British ports, airports, or seaports will not satisfy those rules of origin. So third
Okay.
country exports will not be benefiting from the arrangements that exist between UK and the European Union.
Right. So that said, another question is you said that very logical that about the value chain impact. Suppose an British firm is here, and so it can import some of the intermediaries and do the final manufacturing over here. Uh, but will it be cost effective in that case? I mean, what kind of goods are they? Goods or products are they? Because ideally, if we look at Apple, accepting the technology. The rest of it is basically manufactured in China and India or Vietnam kind of places.
That is a fair point, but let me put an alternative perspective. If your final goods are coming from China and all your value chain is centered in China, then you are I think pandemic and since then geopolitical tensions have made all global firms extremely jittery. They are extremely sensitive to putting all their eggs in one basket. So they want to look at alternatives and they're willing to invest in that also. Case to the point, the Apple story. If we were looking at Apple's value chain in India, the India specific value chain, initially, then you would probably not see more than 10 to 15% of the components coming from anywhere other than China, or even and almost no components being sourced from India. You look at their supply chain today, about a third of the components are already being made in India. You are well aware, Pratim, of some of the large Indian firms which are getting into contract manufacturing. with the partners of the contract manufacturers of Apple. So
The best
Foxconn
thing that has
relationship.
happened is that Tata replaced those Foxcons.
That's right. And then, so there is, this substantial increase in the number, the percentage of components being sourced locally in India, but also increasingly, these firms are asking their component manufacturers to locate out of China. So they are locating in places like Southeast Asia, Vietnam being obviously a very good choice. And we have an FTA with Vietnam through our, agreement in the India ASEAN FTA. So, we will be able to source those intermediates out of Vietnam, Malaysia, Thailand as well. Many of the high-end, high technology intermediates come from countries like Korea, for example. Think of the Samsung value chain, not just the Apple,
Right,
as an illustrative point. So,
right.
uh, essentially, if you have a FTA with all major global economies, which we do almost, we are 80% there. I have agreements with Japan, Korea, Southeast Asia. Now, UK, FTA. Canada is under negotiation. US hopefully will happen soon. Negotiations have been initiated with SACU, the South Africa Customs Union. We have, with the major trading house like UAE, we have an agreement. Mercosur, which includes Brazil, we are looking into. So if you think of the G20, which really is 90% of global trade in the economy, we are almost FTAs with everybody. Soon we'll have it besides China, which is the goal. So I think that alternative global value chain where India is connected to suppliers and the markets is being built. And given our demographics and economies of scale, as I want to reiterate that again, we are very well placed. Just one more point, if I may, with your permission, that is perhaps underappreciated. Uh, in absolute numbers, if I look at absolute numbers, then I have huge numbers of people who are very well educated and highly trained. I have also very large numbers of people who are low skilled, low wage, etc. Where, so China leveraged that very well in its rise. We did not, for various reasons we have discussed earlier. And there is a headwind of automation, robotics, etc. But that advantage is still there, and the transition to robotics is going to take a while. So the window is not fully closed. So all of these FTAs in our industrial policies like PLI and hopefully more interventions is giving us that limited opportunity that we have for a decade or so for maximizing our growth through trade. We are trying to do that through getting these FTAs done quickly and opening up these opportunities. So that's very important for us to understand and appreciate.
Okay. Uh, UK is basically a service economy. Naturally, all developed economies are, excepting a few like Germany. Um, so, the service on the service side, the FTA, how should it help us?
So that's a very good question, Pratimda. So, in services as well, we have got very deep commitments across professional services, business services that cover consulting and technical services, of course, IT enabled services, including on mobility, and, also the double, tax convention that, will now reduce the tax burden on Indian professionals who are working on in the UK. So essentially, because of this binding commitment to keep markets open, this will give greater confidence to Indian firms to invest in the UK and vice versa. So this will definitely help a lot of GCCs, especially keeping in mind that the UK is the hub of a lot of financial sector,
Exactly.
uh, you know, and they are looking to India to tap into our skills for the low-cost intermediation services of our global capability centers. India is for us one of the few geographies that can combine domain-specific, financial domain-specific knowledge with knowledge of AI, and which is what is required for service delivery in the modern world. So that makes this agreement quite a good one for our GCC ecosystem as well.
I mean, sorry to ask this, but should it open another body shopping opportunity for the Indian outfits?
I think that body shopping bus has left the bus stop long time ago. Uh, there is absolutely no doubt about that. The mobility that is required right now is because any delivery of service by definition is multimodal. So 20 years ago, you would do maybe half of the work in the back offices in Bangalore or Hyderabad, The other half used to be done on the client side. So you used to have half of your workforce using visas, located in the client side. Now 90% of the work is done in-house. It can be done remotely. So it's done in India. And then but you need about 10% of your workforce to travel to your client site. And in many cases now the situation is you don't want them to sit at the client site for months or years, because it's
Right.
expensive for you. It is much cheaper to have them working out of India most of the time, but you need them to go frequently. So what businesses are looking for is
That is
not so much.
what I believe the strict visa norms in the US has actually done. It has, in a way, helped us.
Not just that, it was also the technology shock and the pandemic. All of these perfect storm changed the business model for the better because the retention of value, and we have done a paper, Pratimda, which is I'll share with you later, which shows that the difference is significant. If we do it, if our workers are here, four times more value is retained by India in that transaction than if the person was traveling to a developed country on site. So this is obviously better in terms of the export retention, value retention for us. So just to get back to your point, so this, I don't think the body shopping is anyway a priority for Indian firms as well. What is a priority is that as and when I need visas to be people up, to have my people in the client site, because that's important for my business quality and delivery, I should have the certainty of having those visas. So these FTAs with UK and subsequently with EU will provide that, a certain level of certainty, which is very good for our businesses, helping us develop more business.
Okay. So what I understand is that we will get some GCC investments. It will facilitate GCC investments, and UK will gain because it can add value to its offerings on finance. It's a global financial hub. So
Yeah, it's the value chain. So the back end, if they can reduce the cost of their service, delivery to their clients using the Indian back end, it makes them, it helps them grow their own businesses.
right. Now, the more saucier part of the story. Many in India are probably looking at Scotch whiskey. So, what are the things, which are the import items? You haven't touched that. Which, on the import side, how will be the story? The import from India to UK.
So, we have also made significant commitments. UK can be considered so
Sorry,
far the
UK
gold.
to India import.
I'm talking about our commitments to the UK for opening our markets up. So, we have given close to 90% of our manufacturing goods.
Hmm.
We have liberalized that, some immediately, some over a period of time. It includes Scotch whiskey. This was a major ask and a
Hmm.
politically important ask from the UK,
Hmm.
because, as you know, we are the world's largest whiskey drinking nation.
Hmm.
And they, people only see as our.
Though the value of that whiskey is quite different.
I
I
am
mean,
I am coming to that, but if you see, the increase in premium whiskey consumption in India is increasing rapidly. It is increasing much more than any other country,
hmm.
because of course it's a low base effect. But as our people get wealthier and more discerning about taste, as they get exposed to the global brands, there's going to be a
It's a
huge
very
amount,
normal trend. Very
very normal.
normal trend.
So,
So,
and in addition to that, several, as I said, engineering goods and other high-end precision items where UK has a strength, there's also been opened up. We have been more circumspect, more conservative in opening up the automobile market. It has been done through some strict quotas. So yes, UK high-end vehicles will get access to Indian market, but only up to a certain number of cars in quotas. But if I may add, ironically, that the biggest beneficiary of that also will be an Indian conglomerate called Tata, because the
right.
most import successful
JLR.
high end, yes, is the JLR. So
Why we are so circumspect?
we,
You call yourself world's third largest economy, world's fastest growing economy, but when you get into these trade deals, you start talking in the lines of closed economy, back in the 1990s when the economy just opened up. Why?
I think that it's a good point, but I think it's a debatable point. I think in the automobile sector, there
I
is,
mean,
at least.
who is going to buy those costly cars? How many people?
Fully agreed. But in the automobile sector, there is little bit of a concern, not so much for the high-end vehicles, where the quota is quite liberal. But there are two things. First of all, we want some of that engineering prowess to come to India, and not tariff jump, because some of the high-end cars today, even in the ICE space, are incorporating technologies which are not fully widely available in India. So we want to make that technology jump. And we are more circumspect in the case of EVs, because there we are actually quite behind the curve. So we did not, we were not 100% sure whether or not UK will welcome some investments from other countries on EVs, and then produce those EVs to tap the Indian market. And I don't want to name the country. I think you can guess. Because, and if they manufactured in the UK, then they would have made the rules of origin requirements for the treaty. So there are some geostrategic and other, this is a different world, Pratinda. I mean, had you made this point in 2019 or 20, I would have laughed along with you. But now I'm a little bit more careful and
Wiser.
not dismiss these concerns off the bat so easily.
Okay. But I hope that you catch up on EV. I mean, just blocking your doors doesn't help. That has unfortunately
I
become the
fully agree.
Indian
I think
story.
I think the old playbook that always succeeded. Japan, Korea, everybody had that playbook. Is that you provide limited time protection, and you use that to develop scale, and that you do through industrial policy. The problem is that that commitment of limited protection and scale and success is a very strong tango between the government and the private sector. Maybe we have had some missing elements there, and maybe there is need for improvement. I think there is thinking in the government how to close the gaps as far as
Well,
that is
we
concerned.
just had a podcast released today where we said we blamed the Indian investors' mindset. And I was taking cue from that. I mean, you cannot just endlessly have your time. If you don't do that, then go and get out. Let the Chinese come and take the market.
I fully agree. It was, as you know, Pratinda, from economics, it is called the infant industry, argument. So you cannot be an infant for years and years. You have to grow up at some
Right,
point.
right,
Yeah.
right, right. Let's wrap this up with the India EU, referred as the mother of all deals by the EU. So, when you said that it will be implemented this year, at what stage is this? Where is the FTA at this moment?
It is at an advanced stage. The EU has some internal processes, by which, it has, you know, 28 member states who need to be taken into confidence separately, and then there's a parliamentary process. So the EU approval of a FTA is a complicated process. So that is taking time. But as I said earlier, the expectation is that by our Diwali, they will probably have completed all of that, and then we can announce the deal sometime end of this year for implementation. So that's the hope.
Okay. So, if not this year, then this fiscal, then at least in the next fiscal, we can see some impact on the trade.
I am well, if the agreement comes into effect even early 2027, then again, like the UK, you will see an immediate effect in the labor intensive, at least in the labor intensive exports, because there, as I was pointing out, just like in the case of UK, we have a huge competitive disadvantage because our competitors get a zero duty access to the European market, while we face some high positive duties in many areas. So once that disadvantage goes, Indian market in Indian exporters will be penetrating at a higher rate immediately. And in fact,
Right.
in anticipation of that happening, I have spoken to a number of exporters in these sectors. In anticipation of this happening, they're already getting calls from buyers in Europe. So it is moving in that direction very quickly.
That's great. Uh, I'm wrapping this up with a just small question. Is that, you see, fine, labor intensive we were talking about, but garments in China, Vietnam, uh, I think AI is coming in a big way, the AI revolution. And you have to do it to bring finesse and cut down costs and add to the scale. So if that happens, what is this labor intensive advantage we are talking about?
So I think the advantage always comes from scale, whether you're using
Or for
machines.
how many years we can have that advantage?
Good question, Pratim. So again, I think this is basic economics. Your price competitiveness comes from scale. It is about scale will reduce your fixed cost, and the marginal cost will reduce given your technology and productivity gains. Now, the second part, the technology and productivity gains, is what the AI and robotics will achieve to a certain extent. And Vietnam and China already produce at scale. So, on both those counts, I am a little bit behind the curve. But a number of initiatives have been launched, textile parks, and many firms are investing in technology, including the of the type that you are seeing in Vietnam. So the adoption by Indian entrepreneurs in this sector is happening quietly but rapidly. I think the bigger concern is on the labor market effect.
Right.
That is, for that I really don't have an answer. But I think firms are voting with their feet in terms of technology adoption and going for scale.
No, that's okay. And you just cannot expect someone to do the heavy lifting for you. You have to create more industries. That's the only answer. More activities. But my understanding is very basic understanding that if the AI comes in, wherever you have very high value things like a carpet, Kashmiri carpet, or say handcrafted garments, well, fine, you have your labors, but you cannot have all those labors in the rest of the things. That probably has gone, and probably it's how many years we have? 1 or 2 years maximum.
Maybe 2 3 years, because in some of the knitwear etc., even now the robots are not so agile and good. It still requires at least some human hand intervention. Maybe 2 3 years that engineering problem will be solved at scale, because it's just not solving the engineering problem, it's tooling, machining, producing the robots at mass, and then adoption. So that takes some time. So we do have 3 4 years, I think, of time. That is a conservative, maybe more. But conservatively, also, we have definitely 3 4 years. But even 3 4 years is not a very long period. So those concerns are real.
Right, right. So thank you, Pritam. And I heard you saying twice we are slightly behind the curve. So I hope the day comes when we won't have to say this repeatedly. Take hide behind the curve.
If I may have 5 seconds last word, Pratimda, we both have been around for some time now, and I think how much behind the curve we have had improvement. We used to be very behind the curve, and now we are much less behind the curve. So that's why I'm an optimist that we are approaching the day when we will not be behind the curve.
No, no, we all are optimists. We want our nation to do better. But so that is exactly why, well, your job is to plan and my job is to needle. Okay, thank you so much. Bye.
Pleasure is mine, Pratim, as always. Thank you.